After a few years of hopeful signs that America's bee populations might be bouncing back, there's some bad news for the insects. Over the past year, the USDA has found over 44% of honeybee colonies have died off across the country. Now, for those of you that like gematria and that love numerology and all that stuff, you know that 44 is the death number, so it's no surprise that 44% of the bee colonies dying off is what the USDA is reporting. While it's slightly lower than 45% losses seen in 2012 and 2013, it's disappointing considering that bee colony losses over the past 2 years had shown signs of improvement. Well, this is my backyard you're looking at, and this is video that I took this morning. There are a few bees, but just a few years ago, just a couple years ago, there were many, many more bees. And as you can see, I tell you all the time, I have a backyard full of wildflowers, and I indeed do. Now, the reason I keep the flowers around because it's a reminder. All of these flowers have the blueprint for creation. Every single one of them has creation built into them. You can see the Fibonacci sequence in absolutely everything I'm showing you, except for that large cancerous mass on the ground, which is called dog vomit mold, and I'd never seen it before in my life until last year, and it leads me to believe it has something to do with what they're spraying out of the airplanes, but I digress. Normally, honeybees have it easier during the summer, and the record temperatures that have become the new normal due to the climate change over the past several years have something to do with the increased die-off. Well, the main thing, now I'm reading you an article, and this is a mainstream article, and it tells half-truths as usual. The main reason that bees are dying off is because they're spraying the atmosphere with barium, strontium, and aluminum. Dozens and dozens of people were getting their water tested. They were going to laboratories. Well, sadly and unfortunately, laboratories will no longer do those testing because, once again, the FDA, the USDA, one of the alphabet agencies in charge of making sure no one understands the lethality of what they're doing to the atmosphere and the environment that we live in, simply take away their funding so no one will dare touch things like this. But testing had shown the drastic parts per millionth of aluminum, barium, strontium. And if that wasn't bad enough, Monsanto, which has now been bought out by Bayer Aspirin had to pay out not too long ago because they had AIDS infected aspirin that they got caught selling. After they sold it and paid the fine, they simply sent it down to Mexico. No big deal. Well, Bayer Aspirin now owns Monsanto. Monsanto has a line of seeds called Terminator seeds. Now, I've talked about these before ad nauseum. Terminator seeds are why people, specifically in India, are committing suicide, because you can no longer plant a crop, reap the crop, save the heirloom seeds, plant the seeds again the next following year. You can't do that anymore because all the seeds are Terminator seeds, and Monsanto has been going after people who try to do anything except use their particular seeds. Monsanto's biggest smoking gun is their aluminant-resistant line of seeds. They have corn, they have wheat, they have soybean. All of them are resistant to aluminum. That would be a smoking gun right there, in my personal opinion. Now, I apologize, the camera is so shaky, but there were several bees on this particular day. I tell you all the time that I don't see any bees in my yard. Well, today I did, so I took out the camera. It's a very rare event. This backyard used to be swarming. There'd be bees everywhere. You wouldn't go near the flowers because you'd be afraid you'd upset a bee and end up getting stung. That's not the case anymore. Now, as far as looking at the insides of these plants, I'm doing this with an iPhone because my camera's broke. That right there is proof of God. It's proof of intelligent design. The Fibonacci sequence is in everything. Every living being, every blade of grass, every human being, everywhere. It blows away the evolution, survival of the fittest meme. But people aren't believing that anymore. You know what I mean? They're going along with evolution as opposed to creation. And it just gives me more energy to fight back against this, because explain to me how this bee evolved and this flower evolved the proper colors to attract certain birds and bees to help it pollinate and procreate. It's ridiculous. This is all by God's hand. And mankind, a small certain percentage of mankind, is undoing all of this. When the bees are gone, we'll be right behind them. There's no two ways about that. But I have a feeling that they've got something in the works where we won't have an opportunity to see the last of the bees. The bees will see the last of us. But that's just my opinion. I could be totally wrong. But I can feel it in my bones. And most of you can too. At any rate, Richie from Boston, like, share, subscribe. If you want to support this channel, check out the links below. It's t-shirts, tote bags, mugs, all of them help spread the message, because the internet will be gone soon. Richie from Boston. I am out.